This is the Capitol Rundown.
When I ran for president 4 years ago, I said we're in a battle for the soul of America, and we still are.
I'm coming in as someone from outside and saying, why should the system be so unjust? Why should it be so hard to survive in the richest country in the world?
Major progress on the school aid front, and that's good news for parents, students, and the education lobby. It couldn't be happier.
It's all straight ahead. The Capitol Rundown starts now. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sherry Jones. President Biden is now an official 2024 presidential candidate. On Tuesday, he made his first public appearance after announcing the new campaign with a focus on jobs and the economy. Nicole D'Antonio is here for you now with the story.
A friendly union crowd welcomed President Biden for his first speech since launching his re-election bid.
Teamsters, laborers, bricklayers, I make no apologies for being labeled the most pro-union president in American history. I'm proud of it.
He focused on themes he will be building on over the next 18 months.
My economic plan is blue-collar blueprint to rebuild America, and that's what we're doing, rebuilding America.
The president officially announced his 2024 candidacy Tuesday morning with a video.
Let's finish this job. I know we can.
Ahead of the announcement, a CBS News poll found Democrats were accepting of his re-election bid. Just 22% said they were excited. Their number one concern, his age. President Biden is 80 years old, a first for a major presidential campaign.
I don't think they're trying to skirt this issue. They're not trying to run away from it. They want to address it head on.
The timing of the announcement is no coincidence. It's 4 years to the day since President Biden announced his 2020 White House bid. A potential rematch could be in the works. Republican candidate and former President Trump hit Biden's announcement on social media.
American families are being decimated by the worst inflation in half a century.
Other Republicans likely to run in 2024 released statements criticizing Biden's record and calling another term a disaster for the American people. Nicole D'Antonio, CBS News, the White House.
At least one other Democrat has announced his candidacy to run against President Biden. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. launched his bid for the Democratic nomination last week. And Democratic presidential hopeful Marianne Williamson made an appearance at Michigan State University's campus on Monday. But first, she came to WLNS and sat down with our Siobhan Kleffer to talk about why she's running for the nation's top office.
First of all, why are you running? I'm running because I think a real change is needed in this country. And when you meet with Gen Z, young people particularly, they're living their lives in so many ways, not having health care, having a difficult time affording college, living with these college loan debts. So many people are living their lives at the effect of a system that they feel is somehow rigged against them. You know, the economy is doing well for 20% of Americans, but those of us in that 20% are surrounded by a vast sea of economic despair. And the system as it is not seeking to fundamentally reform itself on an economic level. It's so important, I think, and Americans are beginning to wake up to the fact that in every other advanced democracy, they have universal health care, they have free college, they have paid family leave, child care, guaranteed sick pay, guaranteed livable wage. And Americans are beginning to ask, why don't we? And I ask, why don't we? And as president, I would make the moves that are given to the president to try to change all that.
Well, let's talk about your biggest issues then. You mentioned some of them.
Well, health care, certainly. We have 68,000 Americans who die every year from lack of health care. We have 18 million Americans every year who cannot afford to fulfill the prescriptions that their doctors give them. See, the issue is not just the 85 million people. When you talk about the 85 million who are uninsured or underinsured, underinsurance is huge. So your insurance might give you the opportunity to go to the doctor, but not necessarily provide you with what you need in order to fulfill the prescriptions. We have 1 in 4 Americans who live with medical debt. We have Americans here who are rationing their insulin. I would assume that some people who are watching us right now ration their insulin. You don't have this in a country with universal health care.
Why run now? We've got President Joe Biden in office, an incumbent. Why run now against, him? What is he not doing that you feel like you could be doing?
President Biden is taking an incremental approach to healing all of these things that we were talking about. But the situation is so dire. You have 64% of Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck. 60% of Americans who cannot afford a $400 unexpected expenditure. And a newer stat, which is, I find just mind-boggling, 39% of Americans report that they are skipping meals to pay their rent, 44% of millennials. So the president's approach is the amelioration of stress, helping people survive an unjust system. I'm not of that system. So I'm coming in as someone from outside and saying, why should the system be so unjust? Why should it be so hard to survive in the richest country in the world? I think we need fundamental economic reform. We need an economic U-turn in this country.
Well, coming up next, more with Marianne Williamson and why she thinks she's qualified to be President of the United States. The Capitol Rundown. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Author and activist Marianne Williamson is running for president against incumbent Joe Biden. So why would she be the best person for the job? Here's part 2 of Siobhan's interview.
Why are you the best candidate for the job, Democrat or Republican? What makes you the best person?
Well, there are two jobs that we're talking about here. One is defeating the Republicans in 2024, and the other is initiating the season of repair that I believe that this country needs. I believe that we have, Franklin Roosevelt said that we would not have to worry about a fascist takeover in this country as long as democracy delivered on its blessings. There are elements within the Republican Party which are neo-fascist. And this is not the Republican Party that I grew up with. And I believe that it's not just the danger of the disease, it's the weakened immune system that we have to worry about. The reason we have a weakened societal immune system is because democracy has not delivered on its blessings. I want to say to the American people, you deserve those blessings. You deserve universal health care. You deserve free college. You deserve the removal of those college debts. You deserve, in the richest country in the world, remember, free health care, paid family leave, and a guaranteed living wage. That's what we should present to the American people if we want to win in 2024. Saying to the American people, which it seems to be President Biden's basic message, we'll know more tomorrow, that the economy is basically good, is viscerally contradictory to the experience of the majority of Americans for whom, I'm sorry, it is not good. And that is because the president's basic focus is what you might think of as the amelioration of stress, not fundamental economic reform. Also, especially among young people, but of any environmentally conscious person, this is not a moment to be giving more oil drilling permits even than President Trump did. This is not the time to be approving the Willow Project, an $8 billion ConocoPhillips oil extraction project on the North Slope of Alaska. It's not the time to be ramping up environmental disasters, ramping up fossil fuel extraction. It's time to be ramping it down. I am the person to wisely and responsibly move this country through a mass mobilization from a dirty economy to a clean economy, from a war economy to a peace economy, and from an unjust economy to a fair one. No president has a magic wand, nor should they in a democracy, but you would feel with my presidency we began a fundamental era of repair and a new beginning. That's what I bring, and that's what I think people in their hearts want to hear, and that's why I'm the best one to do the job.
Thanks, Siobhan, for that interview. And coming up, state lawmakers are discussing the school budget. Will there be an increase in per pupil funding? Tim Skubic takes a closer look at that debate next. Stay tuned. The Capitol Rundown returns after this. Welcome back to the Capitol Rundown. New legislation that would extend the statute of limitations of reporting a sexual assault has been introduced in Lansing, and the debate over school budget heats up in the capital city as well. Our Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic is here for you now with the very latest.
Probably one of the most important budgets that the legislature can debate every year is the now K through 12 budget, which they're now calling the pre-K through 12, to include early school for young kids who are not of kindergarten age. Why is this so important? Well, the education of your child is at risk or at stake here. And the decision that is now coming out of the Michigan Senate and the Michigan House is that there's going to be a hefty increase. In fact, the senators are calling it an historic increase of $9,700 for every single pupil in the state of Michigan. And that's not all. There are special allocations for special need kids, for students who are learning English, and for the disabled and the like, and there's extra money for them. There's money to beef up the security in the schools. There is money to address mental health needs. This is just a huge, huge budget bill that does affect every part of education. It will pass. There's no question about it, because the Republicans basically are proposing about a 5% increase in the per pupil aid, and the Democrats are at 6% in government work. That's close enough. They could split the difference, and they have an agreement. So this budget is moving. We talked to the guy who chairs the K through 12 budget in the Senate, and he thinks they're going to have this done sometime between June and July, which would just be dandy for the school boards, because they need to know how much money they're getting from the state in order to write their budgets for the school year. It's the Larry Nassar story that refuses to go away. It has spawned another piece of legislation in the Michigan legislature, and here's the background on this proposal to extend the statute of limitation for people that want to file a sexual abuse charge against someone else. During the whole Nassar situation, there were a number of survivors who were not filing their complaints in order to be part of the settlement, and they were getting close to the statute of limitation. So what the lawmakers did is that they put on and opened a new window for these people to file their claims. Now this new legislation from Representative Brixey from Meridian Township basically is expanding the statute of limitations to the age of 52. The age was at 28. And the reasoning behind this, according to the researchers, is pretty solid. A lot of the people that might make a claim eventually are not ready mentally, psychologically to do it at age 28 or age 30. They have found through research that that magical age is 52. If it passes, these victims will have up until age 52 to file a complaint against their abuser. And so the Larry Nassar story continues to make legislation necessary to avoid sexual abuse problems in the future, and giving the people who are abused an avenue to recover some losses from what happened to them.
As always, Tim, we appreciate your insight. Coming up next on The Rundown, a bipartisan effort to look at possible ethics violations by Supreme Court justices. The latest from Washington next. Welcome back. There have been concerns surrounding the Supreme Court and ethics rules. Recently, 2 justices have been criticized for questionable real estate deals and for getting luxury vacations. Trevor Shirley has the story from Washington.
While federal judges must adhere to laws covering judicial ethics, the rules for the Supreme Court are less clear.
There are no ethic guidelines, guardrails at the highest court in the land. This seems ridiculous.
A new bipartisan bill in Congress wants to change that by setting clear rules about what Supreme Court justices must disclose, including gifts, financial information, and real estate transactions.
As they're working to strip away basic rights, they're also failing to hold themselves accountable for some common sense ethical standards.
But in an interview with News Nation, Texas GOP Senator Ted Cruz slammed Democrats for questioning the ethics of some justices, including Justice Clarence Thomas. Recent reports show Thomas accepted undisclosed luxury vacations and made real estate deals with a GOP mega donor.
This is all garbage. This is left-wing and frankly racist hatred of Clarence Thomas.
But New Mexico Democratic Senator Ben Ray Lujan says the concerns extend beyond Justice Thomas.
And now there's a question about a property sale with Justice Gorsuch.
That sale happened shortly after Justice Neil Gorsuch was confirmed to the court, and reports say he did not disclose that the buyer was the CEO of one of the nation's largest law firms. Republican Senate Leader Mitch McConnell says the accusations are political.
This is simply how the far left treats the rule of law. The justices have proven their sobriety and their judicial temperament.
Here for you in Washington, Trevor Shirley, 6 News.
Well, coming up next on the Rundown, is Bill Schuette going to run for Senator Debbie Stabenow's seat? What he had to say about that idea next. A big-name Republican who has held or run for a variety of offices in the state is thinking about running for the U.S. Senate. Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic is here for you tonight with the inside scoop on what Bill Schuette might do.
Republican Bill Schuette has done it all. A former member of Congress, former state senator, former state agriculture director, former attorney general, former candidate for governor, and in 1990 he ran against Democrat Carl Levin and lost the U.S. Senate contest. But now with Democrat Debbie Stabenow not running, Mr. Schuette, well, is he ready for another bite of the U.S. Senate apple?
Do you think he will run?
I think the desire for him to run is there all the time.
But the desire to run for this once-in-a-lifetime seat is one thing. Actually pulling the trigger to do it is quite another. Mr. Schuette is not talking publicly about what he intends to do. We do know he's made no decision, but, quote, sources close to Mr. Schuette suggest that right now the U.S. Senate race is not his top priority. Some will interpret that to mean he is not running. But somebody who worked for him for 8 years suggests maybe not. Maybe Mr. Schuette is just waiting to be lobbied to run.
Never say never. And until somebody says they are absolutely not running and shall not accept being drafted, their name's on the table. That might mean he needs to be recruited a little bit more and be told what the outside forces are willing to do to back him up.
With many Democrats coalescing behind Alyssa Slotkin for the Stabenow seat, Mr. Schuette may be running out of time to get in.
Nothing less than a 101% commitment to running is going to cut it.
So will he or won't he? The betting money in this town is on the latter and not the former. Here for you in Lansing, Tim Skubic, 6 News.
Thank you, Tim. And if you're interested in getting more political news from Michigan and Washington, we've got just the thing for you. You can sign up for our Capitol Rundown newsletter. It is just 1 email each week, and you can get it by pointing your cell phone camera at the screen right now. It will take you to the sign-up page, or you can always head to WLNS.com/newsletters. And that is our show for this week. Thanks for watching the Capitol Rundown.